Hey folks, Joe Valley here. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Quiet Life Podcast. Today, my co-host is Chuck Mullins. Chuck, how you doing, man?
Well, man, how are you?
Good. We've got Mike Nunez coming back on. How many deals have you bought or sold through Mike or with Mike?
Oh, I mean, I personally have done, I've sold him 5 businesses, 6. He sold 1 through me, and then he's bought, 5 plus more from Quiet Life as well.
He does it right, folks. Mike is going to talk about the philosophies around rolling up over 10 businesses as a private aggregator. He has not raised funds for this. His philosophy from buying a business for a 17-year-old, showing him profit and loss statements, to team unity, even though it's across 10 different companies in 10 different locations all across the world. Mike's been on the podcast several times before. He is the featured person in the upcoming launch of the latest Quiet Giants video that you're going to see in your inbox and all over social media. So take a look for that. And Chuck, let's jump right to the podcast. Here we go, folks.
Hey, Mike. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Chuck. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back, actually, right? This is your how many times?
I don't know, maybe 4th time, but this will be the best one.
Well, that's because Chuck's in charge. I like that. Well, Charles in charge. It goes back to when I was a kid.
There you go. You're dating yourself there.
Well, the gray on my chin does that for me, Chuck.
So I will say, just to start, that I think Mike's podcast that I recorded with him, it was like the 9 super secret tips to being a great buyer, is the one I refer to most. Like, meaning when I'm talking to people, I'm like, go watch this because this will give you like the most actionable information. So Mike is always like a really good guest, and like you always come away with a lot of nuggets when talking to Mike.
What's
Thanks.
the title of that one again, Chuck? 9
super secret tips to being a great buyer.
And you came up with that title because it's very cool. Good title.
I don't remember who came up with it. It was maybe an afterthought. We just started talking, and that's where it went.
So 9 secret super tips to being a great buyer. See, it just flew off my tongue. It's perfect.
What's always funny is when people who I have calls with about purchasing their business refer to that call. Oh yeah, hey, I watched your video, and I'm like, okay, great. Well, you know what I'm going to say then. So
right, just go watch it again. Stop asking me questions and taking my time. No, that's what I say about the book. Just read the book. No,
yeah,
I talk to people. So Mike, you confuse me, right? Because my state of mind is I can really only do one thing well. I try to multitask, and sometimes I fail at everything instead of doing great at one good thing. Whereas you exited through Quiet Life, something you bought from Chuck and then sold through Chuck several years later, and then you've gone like on a buying frenzy, and you've bought more than 10 businesses overall, 10 from Quiet Life and a bunch of different acquisitions. So first of all, you got gray on your chin too. How do you have the energy for it? How do you do it, man?
I really, really enjoy it. It's business is fun. My poor family has been sucked into this with me, where, my wife runs a brand. We say, I don't know how to say this without coming across, jerky, but we don't have to. We don't have to work anymore. Like we're good. We live in Puerto Rico. We could just, we did it. We did it for 3 to 6 months where we were like, okay, we're retired, and we were bored out of our minds. So we were like, okay, that's not going to work. Let's set some new goals. So we set some new goals, and now, my wife is involved. My son, I bought him an FBA brand to run he's 17 years old, going to be 18 in a week.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's great. So he's getting involved. So it's funny because he'll get home. Right now he works in our warehouse as well. So he's kind of getting an understanding for logistics and things like that. But he gets home from work, and he'll walk in my office and just say, hey, I had this idea, to help our conversion rate and blah, 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 and my wife will walk in and we'll talk about, oh, hey, I just found this new vendor for creating better product photos and this and this and that. So it's like family dinner time where we're just sitting there talking about it. So it's kind of become, we're just a family of entrepreneurs, and it's really, I don't know, it's kind of bonded us. It's pretty great.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Chuck, you shooting for that someday too?
Yeah, well, I went over to Mike's house recently, and he put my kids to work bottling things. So.
Child labor laws here. I don't know.
They had a cool machine. It was like they had the bottles and they're putting the labels on them. My kids were like, "What's that? Please come over. Let me show you how to do this."
I'll be back in 2 hours. Keep going.
Yeah.
But that's not the way you operate all of the businesses, though, I would assume. Like, how many are you operated in the family and bottling in the garage versus you've got somebody else managing it?
This was in the dining room. Just
it's in the dining room. No, and that one was more like it could all be in the warehouse, but we're like, we don't feel like driving to the warehouse, right? And it's one of those things that if somebody's bored, they'll just go and do a couple of things. So anyway, no, everything is typically out of our warehouse. We have a warehouse here in Central Florida. And that's for most of the business. We also have a business that's based in Bulgaria. So I think we have 12 people based there. And then we have just a ton of virtual employees. So I think we're up to maybe 40 people across the companies right now. Just rock star human beings, love them. And they all like just every day. We have a team meeting and they all just enjoy each other, and they all, like, I have to rein it in maybe about 15 to 20 minutes into the team meeting. So like, okay, guys, we got to stop talking about personal stuff, and we really need to start talking about, what we're here to meet about. But it's that feeling that people use the word culture. It feels like it's played out a little bit, but it is that culture that of just having and working with happy human beings that really just makes this all enjoyable.
So even if the businesses are completely unrelated, maybe a supplement business and a clothing business, you're still on a team call together?
Yeah. So we have kind of taken the approach. It's all we deal mostly with e-com. And there's a few exceptions to that, but with mostly with e-com. And, with e-com, there's a lot that's similar. There's logistics, there's warehousing, there's fulfillment, there's procurement, there's marketing, and so on and so on and so on. So instead of, to answer your question from a couple of minutes ago of how do we do it, it's more like we have what we'll call a center of excellence, like a team that just knows how to do procurement really, really well, and they'll do it across the companies. There are exceptions to that. For example, the suit company that we own, that takes a little bit more of specialization. That company also does millions of dollars and revenue can afford to have a specialized person for that. Some of the smaller companies will aggregate together, put together, and have the same person fulfill the similar role across all companies.
It's still pretty stunning that you do all of it. Really, seriously, it is. What?
Stop it, Joe? Not even that he just does all of it, right? Like, he's sitting there bottling stuff in his house when he doesn't have to, right? Like, it's a testament to the grind. He's still grinding.
So I got to.
It's not a grind if you enjoy it, though, right?
I love it. I love it. And so here's a story. Again, I want to make sure I say this comes across the right way. So listeners and watchers, please know I'm a decent guy. But so I don't know. I bought a soda company business from Quiet Light maybe 3 years ago. Actually, it was March 2020. How can anybody forget March 2020, right? So it was March 2020, and maybe a few months in, they sold some Tab soda. Do you remember Tab soda?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So there were still people who just love Tab soda, and we'd sell a good amount of it every month. And Coke, who owns Tab soda, decided that they are going to stop making it. Right? They were going to stop making the Tab soda. And so I think somebody in my family or something realized that Publix, the main whatever grocery store around here, had like hundreds and hundreds of boxes, and they were kind of on clearance because it was like buy one get one free because it wasn't going to be restocked or whatever. And our rate, because of shipping and things like that, was significantly higher, right? It was actually cheaper to buy it from Publix than to buy it from our supplier, right? At that point. And so I was like, heck, let me just go around. I think we went around and bought 1,000 boxes of or 12 packs of these from different Publixes around. And I was telling this guy that lives in my neighborhood the story, and he says, and again, this is the part where if I come across jerky, please, listeners and such, forgive me, but I think there's a moral to this story. He says, "Hey, I thought you were too rich to be doing stuff like that." And I kind of thought, I didn't say this back to him, but I said in my head, I was like, I'm rich because I do stuff like that, right?
Exactly.
Like that's the work that it takes to do things like this. And I do it because I want to, not because I have to. And that to me is the real joy of being able to do what we do. Is like everything we do what we want to, not because we have to.
Yeah, it's a big difference between, this is the true entrepreneur versus somebody that is high level executive that steps into a small business. The mentality is totally different, and we've seen time and time again when someone hires, let's say, director of digital marketing from a very large company to oversee the marketing of a small company doing 10 million in revenue, that it's kind of a disaster. Let's talk about your mindset when you do make a purchase and you're looking at a company. Are you looking for, and I'm asking so that the listener can kind of learn what you're doing because you're doing it so successfully. Are you looking for a company where the staff will transfer, or are you looking for a company that's at least 5 years old, that transitions fairly easily, or one that's in trouble and your team knows how to fix it? What is your mindset as you look at these different companies to purchase?
So yes, to everything that you just said. So I will say though, those are things to consider further down the line. I think the reason why Quiet Light likes me and I like Quiet Light is I'll vet all of those things before we even get to, let's say, an LOI, right? And I like to say, and this is still my record is still intact here. I have not gone under LOI with Quiet Light or any broker and not closed. So, but it's not because I'm sitting there and I'm accepting everything that happens after the LOI. It's that you do all the work ahead of time, right? Like you just make sure that, is this a legitimate business that you want? Now, that doesn't mean that there weren't hiccups after an LOI, but those are usually addressable. If you're finding enormous hiccups after the fact, then that's something's wrong with your LOI process. And a lot of times, and this is maybe for sellers of their business, a lot of times you might have somebody kind of rush to an LOI thinking that, oh, I'll do all the negotiation afterwards, right? And so I tend to be is this a term? I'm a seller's buyer. So like I kind of wanna be legit with them. I don't wanna. Here's a story that I'm not like. I had a friend who was like, "Oh yeah, I'm looking for a new house," and another friend said, "Oh yeah, my grandma is like looking to sell hers." He's like, "Oh, I'm not interested." And she's like, "You don't know any of the details. You just said you're looking for a house. I told you my grandma." He's like, "No, I'm looking to rip somebody off. I am looking to get the best deal, and I don't want to do that to your grandma." And so I kind of took that lesson. I'm like, oh, I don't want to be the type of buyer that does that. To this day, I'm friends with some of the people who I've purchased business with. One good example of that, and Chuck, you're aware of this. Let's see, I think it was in July of last year. The family took a Grand Canyon trip. It was like a rafting trip down the Grand Canyon for 11 days. And we were actually invited to that by the seller of that business that I bought and sold through Quiet Light. And so we spent 11 days camping with them, and they're an incredible, wonderful family. just really got to know them even better. You have nothing to do but to get to know people on an 11-day camping trip with no cell service, no internet, no, yeah, like nothing like that. So, yeah, it's like that's the type of relationships that we look to create. No, that's not to say there's other people that we bought from that they want absolutely nothing to do with the business or me afterwards. That's okay too. But I'm here. Every once in a while, I'll get an email from somebody we bought, and hey, how's the business doing? Like I get it that this is kind of like their brainchild that they raised from 0 to 1, and they've lovingly entrusted me to help get it from 1 to 5. And I'm always happy to talk to them and say, hey, yeah, we're doing great. We doubled last year. We did this and this and that. And they always like, oh, that's so awesome. Thanks again. And then they'll disappear. So it's just really, it's an interesting dynamic. So I don't think I actually answered your question, Joe.
No, I think you did. I think you did. And it's really, it's Chuck. Tell us. I mean, folks, for those that don't know Chuck, he's what? Chuck, you're. I think you joined just after Brian did, or maybe just before. You're one of the longest tenured advisors on the team.
It's been about 6 years now.
Yeah, and I think I didn't look at the numbers. I actually plan on looking at the numbers in the last 24 months just to verify what I'm about to say. But I think you are the highest revenue producing advisor for Quiet Light at this point in the last couple of years. Not that it means you're out there outselling people. You're just being a nice guy as well. Just like Mike is when he's buying, you're helping as many people as you can. And I know that when you get multiple offers coming on a business, so if you've got a hot business, very attractive one, maybe that Mike has bought, and you've got other buyers making offers, how often does your seller say, well, tell me what you know about the buyers. What do you think of this buyer and that buyer and that buyer?
Yeah, I mean, all the time, right? Like, I would say it's probably half, if not more, of sellers who do not sell to the highest dollar value offer, right? And that's Mike's specialty, is coming in and not actually being the highest dollar value. Like, I think for the majority of the businesses bought, if not all of them, he wasn't the highest. He was the person they liked the most, was going to make the easiest transaction, like ask the right questions, all these things that you can see in the 9 super secret tips of being a great buyer. But like, he's just
plugging
really
a prior podcast. People are just going to hang up, disconnect it, and go search for that one.
I want to chime in on that one though, because I think it's an important point. Allow me to get there from here. So first, one of my tenets is trust is a shortcut, right? Trust is a shortcut to knowledge. Trust is a shortcut to all kinds of things, right? And it's like, if you have trust, like I have the trust in Quiet Light, I know right off the bat, like I have a high level of trust in a business that you all are selling, right? Trust can also be a shortcut to not working with somebody. There are people out there that I am very leery to work with, and they have to overcome obstacles in order for me to buy a business from them, right? So I think that is one thing that people can look like. If there's somebody who you trust and they say something, you now take that as now knowledge, and you're going to walk away. There's somebody that you don't trust, and so on and so on. So I would say there's that part. And I do think that part helps me get to a point where I think Quiet Light typically values businesses very well, very fairly. And so I trust that part of it, right? And so that is one obstacle that usually removes from a lot of businesses that we try to look at and buy. Now, you guys said, Chuck said that sometimes I get businesses for less than somebody else. I want to say that there's reasons for that, right? And it's part of the whole process. So, for example, the soup business that I purchased, one of the questions that I asked that you can see in the super secret video that Chuck's talking about is, well, what's important to you other than money, right? What else is out there? And the seller of that business said, I really want to make sure that my employees are taken care of. I don't want a company to come in here and gut, all the employees, fire everybody, move production from here to there, and so on and so on and so on. And I had no intention of gutting and letting people go. In fact, usually when we buy businesses, we look at it from an acqui-hire perspective, as well as like knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge in the back. So we're not I don't want this to sound negative towards PEs, but we don't have a private equity mindset that we need to squeeze every dollar out of a business. That's private equity. They have to do that, right? They're all about getting a return for their dollars. So in that particular business, just the fact that I was able to promise, I didn't have to put it into paper contracts, and I explicitly told that to the seller because who knows what things may come. But at the time of acquisition, and to date, this is 3 or 4 years ago, we have never let anybody go that was originally from that company. Production is still where it was. And so all the things that I promised have now stayed that way, right? And so when he was selling the business, he was factoring that in, like, okay, well, what else do I want? And so it's if there's a moral to that story, I think it would be, while dollars are of course important, if I was half of the next offer, well, obviously, they're not going to go my way. But if we're within a percentage, of where they are, a small percentage, then the intangibles start to creep in, right? Is this somebody that I want to work with for the next 6 months to a year? Is this somebody who's going to take care of this baby that I've grown to this point, and I want to be able to trust to take over, right? And then I'll just lastly say, usually when we're pricing a business, we look at it at what it's worth to us. We have certainly been heavily outbid on businesses because it might not be a semi-strategic acquisition for us, where it's a semi-strategic acquisition for somebody else, and they can certainly bid a lot higher. And in those cases, we won't win. And those might be cases where the business goes for well over asking price. And again, that's not typically where we're going to play.
Yeah, I think all of this can be summed up in a simple phrase for a buyer. I think I was at Rhodium with the two of you, where I was on stage and somebody in the audience said, "What's the secret to being a good buyer?" And my response was simple and blunt, and it was just don't be an asshole. Now, obviously, it's too simple and too blunt, but that's the beginning of it, because you just said something there that is critically important. Sellers are going to go, can I get through due diligence without this person renegotiating just because they think that's what they're supposed to do? Can I work with this person for 6 months after closing, or during the transition and training period, which just might be 3 months? Can I go, rafting down the Colorado River for 11 days with this person? It all helps to make the decision towards choosing you as a buyer. Let me go on to a little different tangent here structurally, Mike, because it's important. You've got over 10 businesses. When you acquire a new business, do you set up a new entity where it's a separate S Corp or LLC? And if you do, tell us why. And if you don't, tell us why.
Yeah, we definitely do. So we always do, because I like flexibility. And part of the flexibility is, let's say one of the businesses starts taking off and doubling, tripling, whatever, year over year. I want the ability to sell that particular business without intermingling of the books, right? Like that's the hardest thing. And it goes back to what I said, a couple of minutes ago, trust, right? How much can the buyer trust the books? And if the books are super clean, I've never intermingled personal funds, I don't need to worry about all sorts of ad backs and things like that. It's just straight up books. That to me is the highest level of trust an acquirer can have in a company. So that's probably the number one reason why we keep things separated. Liability is another that's always nice to have, but we're not doing anything that's too dangerous. So I don't have to worry too much about that. But that is 100% the way that we do it. Now, you might be thinking, oh, but I thought you just said a couple minutes ago that you have people that work across the businesses, and we absolutely do. We have it working almost like an internal agency. It's not. It's an internal part of the company. These are all employees of the parent company. But each of the companies that we acquire, can tap into this, let's say, procurement center of excellence, right? Now I charge the company, and I make sure I do it at a market rate, because if I don't, then after the fact they could say, well, I can't replace this position for what you're paying these people. And if as in the case with a couple of our exits, they're still using these services, right? Like when nobody's using like the internal center of excellence, they all prefer to take that in house. But we have somebody still using our warehouse as almost a 3PL. And again, we charge the going rate to ourselves when we owned it, and we charge the exact same rate after they exited. So it's one of those win-wins for everybody. You can't, I can't imagine that conversation. Well, we were charging ourselves half of this, but in order to truly make it profitable, we're going to need to charge you double, right? That just opens up such a can of worms that, well, I need to take that away from the P&L and so on. We avoid all of those problems by just charging market rate, and something that we'd be willing to continue even after the exit.
Yeah, you've bought so many businesses, you know how important that is and what you're going to look for. And it goes back to that number one motto, which is trust more than anything else. Chuck, in this situation, if Mike came to you and wanted to sell the whole package, would you see his entities set up separately, P&L set up separately, as an advantage or a disadvantage?
I don't know that it's an advantage or a disadvantage. Like, it's more the opposite direction, I think. When you have two businesses within the same entity and you're looking to sell and say you want to use an SBA loan or something, like, to separate those is a real pain. To add them together, not a big deal, right? So I think setting them up separately, you've got a little bit more costs, right, with accountants and things of that nature. But to add them together after the fact is easy, no brainer. Separating them is painful and expensive.
Mike, do you have a plan in terms of another exit, or is it just keep acquiring and keep having fun until it's no longer fun and it's too much work?
So I was at this event down in Mexico, it's a sourcing event, and I ran into this very nice woman who I was just telling her my story, and she's like, "Oh, so you're a serial exiter?" And I was like, "Oh, I never heard that term before."
You should have said, no, I'm an exitpreneur. I just keep that down, will you please?
Okay, got it. So for those that you don't know, that's Joe's book, and you can see the.
You better know it, people. You better know it.
So the plan overall, like I have this I don't know if this is going to come out before the Quiet Giant series does.
Same week. Same week. Yep.
Okay, got it. So, we have that coming out, and the theme of that one is my family, right? And the hope and dream of ours is, our lives are good. We want to now change everybody else's, right? So that's the new goal, right? Like, a lot of people say you gotta find happiness or things. It's happiness is in fulfillment. Fulfillment is in the pursuit of a goal, right? And so that's where we are right now. And we have this new goal, and it's to really help our families, right? So to that end, to answer your question, Joe, we are intentional. I have a very big philosophy around being intentional. If you let life happen to you, you get what life gives you, right? So we want to be intentional about what we want to make happen. So the intention is to take these businesses, grow them together. If there's outliers that take off on their own, as in the case with the one that we bought and sold through Quiet Light, those will exit and we'll keep going. But the ones that are slow and steady, they're not hockey stick growth, but they might be up 20% every year for the last 5 years, right? And you aggregate 5, 6, 10, 15 of those together, you get to a $5 million EBITDA or SDE, and with a constant year-over-year growth, and put those together as a diversified portfolio of e-com that has a very constant, 10, 20, 30% growth year over year. And that's going to be really attractive to somebody on the other side of this, right? And so that's I would say the longer term goal is that with smaller, well, maybe not smaller, but individual exits along the way.
Can you commit today, right here, right now, to use Chuck for that exit?
Only because I want to make them work for it. I will not.
Good answer.
So, and I sold one of Mike's businesses recently, but he did sell another business, not through me.
I did,
but maybe it was a strategic buyer that approached him, right? So, my feelings weren't hurt.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. There's plenty of business to go around. I mean, I've had people, reach out to me for advice on some listing that they've got with somebody else. And, of course, I get a little confused as to why they chose that path, and they explain it, and I help them regardless. And we're friends. That's the key thing. We're not, after years of doing business together, a client broker relationship, we're friends. And if they had a strategic reason for selling to somebody without a broker, then they're going to, ask me for advice. And same thing with you, Chuck. It is what it is. We're not a organization at Quiet Light of brokers / salespeople. We're just here to help. And I know that sounds just so corny, but that's the bottom line, and it's what has propelled us to continue to grow and have the brand and reputation that we have today. So
yeah, the way I'll describe that is I have found you guys not to be what I would call transactional, right? You do this for me, I do this for you. It's usually, and it all started with the first time, and I won't repeat that story because I've said it on previous podcasts, but it all started with my first call with you and Mark, and you guys said, Mike, don't sell your business yet. It is growing too fast. Wait till and have it still have growth left, but you're doubling year over year. You can realize a lot more value. And when you guys turned away a several $100,000, I don't know how big that was to you at the time, right? But it would have been at least a several $100,000 commission to the brokerage. And you guys said, you need to wait. I was like, okay, there's that trust thing that I was mentioning a little bit earlier. And which is why I've really come back to you guys over and over again. Sorry, Chuck, I feel like I interrupted you.
No. And the only problem with that story is that's the one he sold to a strategic and never brought back.
But he's bought and sold 10 others through Quiet Light. So
yeah,
okay.
I think I've made up for it by now.
Well, and I think I'm going to lose him as a client because I've had to tell multiple sellers, like, don't sell it to Mike. Like, I can get you more here. And Mike's been like he's aware of me doing that. And he's and I'm like, dude, clients first. Like, I can't take care of you. I'm sorry.
I get so mad, but I also realize Chuck's just doing his job, and he is he represents the seller, right? And so I got the positive side of that when he was selling my business, right? But it's tough, right? It's tough. It's funny because I feel like people are like, "Oh, it must be great being such good friends with a broker." I'm like, no. I feel like he needs to prove that he's not doing, things just because it's me, and he'll push harder, like on that. So, I do wish sometimes maybe that I need to diversify brokers. Maybe.
Yeah, there's no inside track with Chuck, is what you're saying.
No.
Hey, when a couple of questions real quick. With 10 plus businesses, do you have a CFO? Do you personally look at every P&L every month? How's that work?
Yeah. So I think there's, I wish I would have learned this earlier. So if there's any early on entrepreneurs on listening to this, go get financial literacy. Like, go learn how to read a P&L. Go learn how to read a balance sheet. When I was acquiring the business for my son, we sat down, we went through the P&L, line by line, and recreated it. Says, okay, this is what their P&L looks like. What will our P&L once we take this over look like? Right? Where are the missing costs? that for whatever reason they don't have to have, but we need to have, right? If any. And every month we actually will sit down and go through the P&L and look at that. So to answer your question, I do look at every P&L every single month. I do have a bookkeeping company and service that handles the books on my behalf. I kind of have this philosophy of bring value where value is greatest, right? And to do bookkeeping, minute by minute, I don't bring any value there. Now, looking at the books on a monthly basis, which takes me 30 minutes maybe for a business, I can identify, well, why are we spending so much here? Why are we underspending here? Why are our ACOS is low? We could be squeaking out more overall profit if we took a look at this. So it informs my plan basically for the next month based off of the previous month's P&L. So to answer your question, there's no CFO. I kind of act like the CFO. We're also a little bit different in that we don't operate these businesses in need of cash flow. We can do what's right for the business all of the time. And so that's a little bit different about us than I think maybe some of the buyers that have to take a salary from the business in order to survive. We don't look at it that way. We're like, okay, well, we're selling like crazy. We can double inventory or we can take a dividend or distribution. Let's go double inventory, right? Like that's the better thing for the business to do, and let's go achieve that. So,
all right. So you just said distribution. I want to clarify for folks. That means you're running these as LLCs or S corps.
Correct.
Yep.
LLCs. Yep.
Now, let me ask another question because you brought up your 17-year-old a couple of times. How much did you risk on a 17-year-old running a business? That's what I want to know.
Not too much. Tens of thousands.
Ice cream money for him. Okay. All right.
No,
tens of thousands. That's good. Okay. And then one last question in terms of buying. Are you
He didn't risk it, right? He invested it in him.
He invested in him. Well, you did. Early on, I had somebody buy a business from me for his son. And his son had just recently graduated from college. And I thought, gee, really, maybe you should have, in lieu of spending $200,000 on college, you should have just bought the business when he was 18. But, it gives that child time to grow and mature. I certainly needed that when I was in college and, spread your wings a little bit. But sure. I think it's a great idea. It's something that I've thought about for the last 10 years. And my kids are now a freshman and junior in college. One definitely has an entrepreneurial spirit. They'll probably go off on their own way for a bit, and then maybe we'll do that at some point. Anyway, in regards to buying these businesses, Mike, right? You don't have to work. How do you buy them? Are you buying them with cash, with a HELOC, with a line of credit, with SBA loans? What's your deal?
Yeah, that's part of the value proposition that we offer when we walk into a business. We don't buy anything from the SBA. I love the SBA. It's what we bought the business 3-4 years ago that then we sold through quite like. However, there's risks involved with the SBA that a lot of people are aware of. You basically have to use your house as collateral. We are fortunate enough to have several houses. And so to put several houses as collateral for any individual business is not ideal. So we don't do that. We don't finance our businesses. We'll pay cash from our own reserves, basically.
And Mike, you've got a specific strategy you use when you're thinking about like investing, right? And I'm not sure if you know where I'm going with this, but it's more not out of I want to grow. It's out of a preservation and like making sure that you don't lose money, right?
I mean, yeah. Like if I go and park, $100,000 in a bank account right now, even if it's making a fantastic 4.24%, which is incredible, right? From a savings perspective, with inflation, I just lost 3% last month, right? Yeah. So for me, part of this is, as Chuck said, a cash preservation strategy where, there's no better way that I found to triple, quadruple, quintuple dollars in a 2 to 3 year plan. And then buying these businesses, fixing them up, and while still leaving meat on the bone for the next buyer. Chuck said this to me one time, and it stuck with me. And Chuck, don't let it go to your head that I still remember this. But he talked a lot about upcycling a business. That there's all these entrepreneurs out there that they take this from 0 to 1, and then you'll have the Mike come in and I'll take it from 1 to 3, right? And then Aaron, one of my business partners, said, at some point you hit a point where you're doing 1Z, 2Z improvements, and you just don't have everything you need to bring that business from that 3 to that 5 or that 7 or that 10. And so that's the point where you sell it, and you let the next person come in and upcycle that business from 3 to a 5, and then they'll upcycle it from 5 to a 7, and so on and so on and so on. It's just the life of a business, and so that's kind of the cash preservation growth strategy that we have. I haven't found a better way to do it yet. I'm more mad that it took me so long to find this one. So, but we're really happy with how it's all turned out.
I say that
a couple times to me where it's, you're set now, right? All you got to make sure is that you don't screw up, right? So it's like when I make an investment, I just got to make sure that I don't screw up, right? Yeah. We're set. If we do nothing, we're set. If I do something and I mess up, we're not set. So, right. You have a rational, I guess, fear of losing what you've created, right? Yeah. And that helps drive your decision making.
Yep. Yeah. 100%.
That upcycling that you're talking about, I've always used the phrase, don't promote yourself to your own level of incompetence. We're good at certain things. We can take a business from 0 to 1 or 1 to 4, but we may not be that person to take it to the next level. And the problem is, if you think you are, but you're not, and your ego gets in the way and greed gets in the way, you're just going to screw it up. You're going to screw it up, and it's going to trend down or trend flat, and the multiple is going to be lower. It's not going to be worth as much money. You're going to be miserable, and you're not going to give the time and energy and effort that you need to keep the business safe, healthy, and growing. So, real important stuff. Listen, Mike, I don't want the audience to think that you're a superhero here, right? I mean, we learned often by screwing up, right?
Yeah.
You haven't talked about any of your screw ups in life yet. Give us one or two of those. Come on. Chuck, do you want to just talk about Mike's screw ups instead?
No. I've certainly had businesses fail. Like I bought a business not through Quiet Light, so you'll be pleased to hear that this business. I still own it, and so I don't want to talk specifically about it. But there were things about the business that I don't enjoy, and that's a pretty big failure on my part to acquire a business that I don't enjoy. There's the business is not doing well. I failed. We have a company acquisition algorithm, right? Like we basically run it through. We ask these questions about every particular business that we're looking at buying, and I was so enthralled with this business. Before we acquired it, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be great, and this and this and that. It's cool, it's hip." And I am not cool and hip because I say the words cool and hip. That I bought it anyway, and it's not living up to what I think its potential is. And I think the biggest reason is it's a very influencer based business, and I do not enjoy. Or I did not enjoy working with the influencer that was primarily on the business, and I'd rather the business not work than go back on that, right? So maybe there's a little bit of it's not. I wouldn't even call it pride because I'm admitting to failure here, but I would say there's a choosing my peace over profit, and that's that's a part. It's hard to call that a failure, Joe. Choosing peace over profit, but I'll say that the business is failing, but my piece is certainly successful.
Yeah, no, that's important. Some people disagree with this and some live by it adamantly. And that is, no matter what you're doing, what you're going to buy, what business you're going to grow or invest in or start, you should have some interest and passion for it, because inevitably you're going to hit rough patches. And during those rough patches, if you have disdain for the business, you're just going to go, oh, well, maybe it's time just to move on to something else. And you're not going to have the fortitude, the guts to double down and fix what is broken and put it back on the right path. Other people think of business as business, and it's all encompassing that passion. I kind of have always felt that there's a need to have an interest in the service or product that you're selling or that you're providing in order to really be the most successful at it. Do either of you agree or disagree with that philosophy?
I'm going to disagree only slightly. Like you can find.
Okay, thanks for joining us today, Mike.
So for example, I have a soda company. I don't have a particular affinity for sodas. I rarely drink soda at home. However, the emails that we get back from the customer, I used to drink Verner's in Michigan when I was 15 and haven't had it since I moved out here to California, and I'm so glad I found you. It gave me a memory of my childhood, right? So for that business, we internally have a mantra that we deliver happiness, right? For the soup company, we deliver confidence, and so on and so on and so on, right? We have a water bottle company, we're delivering health. So we put our value into how we're actually helping, the people that we're servicing. So from that perspective, I'm interested in that. Am I interested in sodas specifically? No. That said, going back to the one that I don't like, it's more like I don't like the business of it more so than the product of it. The product of it's great. It's actually, I think, one of the best ones out there. It's more the business of it that I don't enjoy. And so I do have an internal saying that I've heard, no matter how far down the wrong road you are, turn around, right? And so I just keep asking myself, is this the wrong road for this business?
Yeah.
I think Mike has a luxury here, whereas he has a dozen businesses, right? You can't necessarily get to a dozen businesses by only following passion projects. If you're buying one business and you don't like it, I think that's probably the wrong approach. But once you've gotten your 3 or 4 businesses maybe that you like, and you're looking at the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, if you want to be able to buy additional businesses, you're not going to be able to love them all. There's just not enough deal flow that's going to meet all of your criteria in order to find all businesses you love.
Right. But there's still some satisfaction and maybe passion's not the right word with the soda companies that you're delivering happiness. You're making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
And if you think about what Chuck and I do, we are, brokering deals. We don't necessarily have a passion for brokering deals, but we do have a passion and great deal of satisfaction for making a difference in people's lives. Right? By telling you years ago, don't sell yet. And look what it did for you and look what it's done. I remember that soda company. Chuck, did you broker that?
Yeah.
I remember that. The gentleman selling it many, many years ago, talking to him and what a difference it would have made by him being able to sell that. It's been in his family for years, I think. Ramon is a great example where this is a guy that was a single dad, literally had to sleep in the airport one night when his flight was canceled with his son because he couldn't afford a hotel. And by helping him sell his business for what we sold it for, it made an enormous difference in his life. And we've become lifelong friends. So I think that's the passion that you feel or that interest or gratification that you get from it, not necessarily selling a particular widget.
Yeah, I would agree with that part, Joe, for sure. And it's I think you have the entrepreneurs that are the 0 to 1 they've created. Those are the people that you've got to have a passion for that product, because there's no way you're going to get it to 1 if you don't. You have to have it. For me, I have a passion for the people, right? Like I love the people I work with, and we're getting together Friday, like this Friday, before I fly back to Puerto Rico. I'm like, hey, everybody, let's get together. Like it's that's where my passion lies, is in the people that's around it. And then, for us, we look at it. I don't want to just sell a widget. I want to sell a widget that has some sort of purpose. And that's why we do look at it as delivering happiness, delivering confidence, and so on and so on and so on.
I like it. Mike, 5th time's the charm, 4th time's the charm. I really appreciate you coming back on the podcast. Folks, the timing of this is in alignment with the next launch of the Quiet Giants video series. Our CMO, Chris Moore, spent a lot of time, probably way too much time with Mike, taking up space and time in your life, interviewing you, learning about your philosophies and your businesses and approach to acquiring what you've acquired and exiting what you've exited. So thank you, Mike, for spending so much time with Chris. And I know it's like a lot of time in front of the camera. Appreciate it. Chuck, as always, thank you. I can't say anything more than that, because if I talked about everything that you do with relationship with Mike, with everybody else, with correcting my emails and things of that nature, I used to hate that. Like we did, Mike, you
still hate it.
Everybody listening, like Mark and I would be like, I don't know if we want to ask Chuck his opinion on this, because we know we're going to get 19 paragraphs. We've grown to love it, though, because it makes us better at what we do. So thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your time. We'll get this launched and see you hopefully soon. We'll talk to you soon.